next couple days. I was thinking how best to frame how I ended up being in front of you today, and maybe in high-level strokes. I went from psychology to architecture. From architecture, I took a right turn into leadership consulting for 2 years, and then out of that I met a woman who was starting an energy company, who was the former chief operating officer of PJM. How many of you are familiar with PJM? It's the Mid-Atlantic grid operator that handles transmission, generation, distribution, and matching the energy market for about 19 million households in the mainland. And so it's an extensive network, and she left that company, PJM, that organization, to start her own company, Veridity Energy. And I met her, and she ultimately gave me an invitation to be her 7th employee. And that took me from leadership consulting work right into the middle of a lot of energy work. That was very exciting. The work that her company, Veridity, did focused on advanced demand response, looking at ways to take critical end energy assets and make them responsive to grid issues, and finding ways to compensate for grid flexibility, load flexibility. It was an interesting precursor to the situation we're in now. As we add more and more renewables, the ability to control load on the grid, have it show up when you want, have it be reduced when you need it, will be critical to our commitment to 100% renewables. So it was an exciting time for me. I led our work in New York City with Con Edison and also with the City of New York through a grant. And so that led me into many large building owners who had millions of square foot under management, and they were finding ways they could manage the energy profile of their buildings. Not long after starting Veridity, Audrey Zibelman was asked by, at that time, Governor Cuomo, to lead the Public Service Commission for New York State, to be the woman in charge of all the utilities in New York State, to help them find a new business model for how they would operate within New York State. And so that was a big lesson for me, to see how can you expand your impact by going into the realm of public service commissions. When she took that role, this was about the time when cities were realizing that they needed to stay in the Paris Climate Accord. At the federal level, the US was making a decision to pull out of the Paris Climate Accord, but cities like Chicago, New York City, Washington, D.C. were saying, no, this is critical. We need to find a way to decarbonize our energy system for the good of the people within our cities. So they started making bold promises. And one of the things that made this all come together for me was when I was doing leadership consulting. If you want to achieve something spectacular, you have to make a stand for it, you have to make a bold commitment for it, and you have to do it in a way that inspires others to action. And that was, I felt, the start of these bold commitments. 80% by 2050, 100% by 2040. You see the bold commitments happening more and more. The next question, though, is how are we actually going to achieve it? How are we truly going to overcome inertia and make these breakthrough promises a reality? And that's the moment I confronted myself with in terms of what did I want to do moving forward. And at that point, I decided I wanted to work with city governments who would make these bold promises, but had no power to actually deliver them, to create the arena for stakeholder engagement that could lead to results. And that's pretty much why we're here today, is you're part of a group that we started in Chicago in 2014 that led to doing quarterly sessions in 5 US cities since 2016. We do New York City, we do Washington, D.C., Boston, and Chicago. And every quarter, leaders come together to challenge themselves to align on a critical obstacle that cannot be overcome alone, but is essential to the achievement of that goal, whether it be carbon-free Boston, or net zero carbon Washington, D.C. Any of those bold ideas have an immediate critical obstacle standing in the way of it happening. And if you can't align on what that obstacle is, you can never achieve the goal that you want. And so that became the format of our events. We run a 3-part competition. First part of the competition is where our speakers are invited to come forward and share with you what they feel is a critical obstacle to the achievement of an important objective that cannot be overcome without collaboration. Each speaker today will put forward that obstacle. Your job is going to be to prioritize those obstacles. Find a way that you can prioritize them. And in the process, that should align us around urgency to tackle that issue. Once we know that, we go to part 2 of the competition, which is at your tables, you're going to have a little less than an hour to come up with a 12-month solution that could actually overcome that obstacle. Someone at your table is going to present that solution to the group, and the room, your peers, are going to decide whether that solution is possible in 12 months and would have the impact needed. And we'll do that by vote. At the end of that process, we're going to have an obstacle that we align on as critical. We're going to have a solution that we feel is feasible and would have an impact. And that only leaves one more thing. Who's willing to raise their hand and volunteer to be on a team to actually deliver it in 12 months? Those are the stakes for today, tomorrow, all the way through Friday. So that's the format. I will tell you that over the last 2 years, we've had over 250 leaders across 4 cities in the Caribbean raise their hand, join task forces to actually deliver on these 12-month challenges. I'll also tell you now that the odds are against you for this to work. Let's just be realistic. This is a volunteer commitment you're making that will require collaboration, and that is an extremely short timeline, 12 months. So that means you need to be smart in terms of the scope of what you go after in 12 months. But real impact is undeniable. That's the best way to fight inertia, is demonstrate you can do things together in 12 months. So I hope I've laid out the format for today. We have an extraordinary set of speakers for the entire session that we're together through Friday, but I'm especially happy and excited about how we're able to start things today. So let me share a brief moment of acknowledgement to our sponsors, who I went to and I said, Francisco and Lisa and others, and the ITRON team, I think this would be really helpful for Puerto Rico. I'm inspired by the results that we're seeing in the other cities, and I know that time is of the essence. Let's see if this approach can drive greater collaboration, greater alignment, greater results in 12 months. My personal intention is that 12 months from today, we're right back here seeing presentations from those task forces on things that we felt and voted on was important to address, coming in front of you and demonstrating what they were able to achieve in 12 months. That's the challenge. We may or may not achieve it, but that's the aspiration going into this time with you. So let's move forward. Special thanks to the sponsors across the cities in the Caribbean that support this work that we've been doing now for over 5 years. It's been extraordinary to work with all these different companies, public and private. We really stand at the intersection of both. We're not a lobbying organization. We're just focused on results. Results among peers on things that are critical. So that's my welcome. You've seen the slide. I'm going to pull up and see, before we start introducing our speakers, from what do you find is most important for us to discuss today. So let me pop out of here and go over and check. All right, so front and center clearly is resilience. I talked to several of you who came to this conference saying this is very timely, given the power outage we just went through on the way to the conference. Did anybody experience the power outage? All right, so yeah. Did you think in your mind, oh, here I am going to a critical infrastructure and resilience conference? Yes, perfect time. All right, so look at that in the center, but then just on the outer rim, partnerships, transportation, transmission, solar at the edge, integration of distributed generation resources. All right, so I wanted to share that so that our speakers have a sense of what people are thinking is most important to discuss today. You're going to have time at your tables to introduce yourself to one another. If you're staying for multiple days, we're going to shift up the tables so you'll have a chance to meet new people and partner with others throughout the days that we work together. All right. The next poll that we'll go to is, what is the unique resource you bring to our discussion today? If this were a potluck dinner and everybody brought something, what's the unique thing you're bringing to this discussion to drive impact on these issues in 12 months? Think about that a little, because that will inform what obstacles you select, what solutions you develop with your team at your table, and ultimately what you vote on that could be potentially a team that you'd want to support over 12 months. I love it. You're right on it. Here they come. All right, fantastic. We'll keep this up as a resource so we can go back to it. Do want to acknowledge my team that helped make this happen. We've got Jess Lang in the back. She's been helping you with all things related to logistics in terms of being here. She will be a resource for you throughout the conference. Okay, great. So experience is in the room. All right, let's take that experience and apply it to the challenge of 12-month impact. All right, so with that said, I'll take us to our agenda to start things off. Francisco Berrios Portela, he is the Executive Director of Energy Policy Programs for the Department of Economic Development. It has been a pleasure to work with you. You've been a part of our steering committee to build this program over these days. You've been instrumental in the creation we'll have tomorrow evening. How many of you are registered for our reception tomorrow? I should see a fair amount of you. We still have space for that if you want to let others know about this reception. It should be an outstanding opportunity. I'm so excited that Manuel Cedar will be joining us. We'll have Johnson Controls speaking about work. If you are needing to hire people to fulfill on a vision of change, this is the place to be tomorrow. Come with the positions you have in mind that you need to fill. Let's really drive this from a standpoint of opportunity. When we think about critical infrastructure, equity, and resilience, my biggest takeaway on equity is about wealth creation. A lot of times we think about equity in terms of concern of the energy cost burden on those who are current renewables. If we go to storage, that's just going to put added pressure on those right at the edge of the energy cost burden now. If we transition to electric vehicles, how is that going to be affordable? And we look at it often from a standpoint of how do we protect further pain on those who already are disadvantaged? The other side of that coin is how do we drive economic prosperity? How do we make this moment one of wealth creation that has generational impact? That's the other side of this opportunity. So that's been my look at how we address equity in these decisions, but we keep that as part of this discussion from the beginning. So Francisco, I'm very happy to introduce you to start things off. I'll welcome you to the stage. From there, I'll go to Madam Secretary Eileen Velez Vega to join us. So, and then afterwards, Daniel will come afterwards to present. So Francisco, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thanks a lot and welcome everybody here. My name is Francisco Berrios. I'm the director for the Energy Policy Program. Our office is located within the Department of Economic Development and Commerce at Puerto Rico. So I always want to bring the perspective of economic development, and it's so important for Puerto Rico's economic development. So when I appreciate HG for making this happen, I appreciate everybody coming to Puerto Rico for this. It's honestly a great opportunity to discuss and to make you, provide you with information of where are the opportunities. At the same time, for tomorrow's event, we look forward to have everybody to connect with local companies. We invited a lot of local stakeholders, key stakeholders that will be great partners for you to develop projects at Puerto Rico. And we look forward really to have a great time tomorrow. In the Department of Economic Development, so we always, yes, our office is named Energy Policy Program. So Puerto Rico has an energy policy by the law. It's established per Act 17, 2019. And yes, it is really ambitious, it's really aggressive, and it looks, specifically, we can summarize that the energy policy looks for having fair rates, having reliability and resiliency, and having clean energy. There is a lot more, but that can summarize what the energy policy looks for. Our focus within the Department of Economic Development is to promote the distributed clean generation. That includes, yes, renewables. It also includes that it's currently happening and growing really fast. Both, of course, and we look forward to promote those type of developments. And how we do that? With incentives, with decrease. Right now, we are running a $20 million program for small distributed generation of renewable for small and medium-sized business. And we, at the same time, we have decreased for energy, for green energy funds. So a great part of our role. At the same time, we focus on education about what is energy conservation and which are for the entire consumers. And also, we are the advisors of the government about energy. Everything related to government energy, it's my fault. So, honestly, and I accept the responsibility on that. All agencies with not the best, and we have a lot of examples on that, not having the best implementations, it's our fault. And I don't want to, yes, we are starting with baby steps, but we need to accelerate. We need to be responsible of what we promote. And in that sense, we are looking for alternatives. There is a lot, and you already know that there is a lot for making the government efficient on energy, on a lot of things, but specifically on energy conservation. At the same time, we are really close with the federal funds. We manage the Weatherization Assistance Program, the WAP. We manage the State Energy Program. That's why we are recognized as the State Energy Office for Puerto Rico by the DOE. And we are really involved on the Puerto Rico energy recovery. So we are not the ones leading specifically the energy recovery, but yes, as HG mentioned, we want to make economic development through the opportunity of the federal funds that we have now available for the energy recovery that we have. So that's what we are, that's our role. And when HG asked me to bring a topic, specifically what is more related to energy and economic development than the rates that we currently have. So this is a barrier for the economic growth of Puerto Rico, energy. As you can see on the image, those are the energy rates at your left since 2018 to 2021. Of course, you can see a drop because of the COVID situation and the drop at the fossil fuels. But now we are identifying what is happening, an increase, because we are tied to the fossil fuels. And that's something that really is not the most optimistic scenario towards the future. And whenever any asset, any investor is considering site selection, there are three main things that they are asked, all of them. One is workforce, real estate, and energy. So on workforce, we have a great workforce, technical guys. We have great universities. On the real estate, we have a lot of properties. Probably we can have better, but there are plenty of alternatives. And on energy, that's where we are really, it's a barrier for the economic growth of Puerto Rico. And yes, there is happening a lot of prices and developments for companies to look Puerto Rico as an alternative. And that is, yes, that's something that we promote. But not all the companies want to focus specifically on producing energy. They want to focus on whatever it's their business. So we need to start seeing this, the energy transformation of Puerto Rico not only as it will be for the good of the environment, yes, it will, but we need to start looking this as an economic growth opportunity and a barrier for our economic growth. The image on the right is the energy rates for 2021 within all the states. We are not the highest rate on energy at the US, it's Hawaii. But our profile and our economy is based on manufacturing. 50% of our GDP comes from manufacturing, different than Hawaii. So that means that we need to work as fast as possible in order to have better rates, in order to cut energy costs. So what's the roadmap to cut the energy costs? The roadmap, of course, is established under the public policy that we have in place. And it includes at first the integration of renewables energy. That includes a massive amount of renewable energy to be integrated within the next couple of years. And that's really, really aggressive. We are currently having more than 1,000 megawatts basically to be deployed in the next year or 18 months. So that is huge. We are 100 by 35 miles at Puerto Rico, so we are 3 million people here. So we need a lot to work and we need to move fast for this. Grid modernization. Of course, we have Luma here. Don Cortez is in charge of that grid modernization of Puerto Rico. And I know that they are committed to do a great work. They have the experience. We really need that in order to be able to integrate all the distributed generation, in order to be able to integrate the electrification of transportation. So grid modernization is a must in order to work with microgrids integration, in order to develop and deploy all the renewable energy that we look for. And at the same time, energy efficiency. The energy efficiency is essential. And everything goes together. I mean, grid modernization with the renewable integrations and energy efficiency, it all goes together. So that's, and most of people forgot about energy efficiency when they talk about the energy policy that we have in place. And it's there. And we need to start working with that as it's essential for reducing the energy costs and being able to manage the demands that we will be having. So energy transformation will facilitate economic growth. How that will happen? Well, it will improve Puerto Rico's competitiveness, provide energy demand considering additional loads of transportation electrification. Yes, we are promoting a lot of EVs, but we need to make sure that we will be able to manage all those additional loads. Now, it will not, the grid saturation that a lot of people talk about will not be only because of the distributed generation, but also will consider the EVs integration. So we need to start working with that as soon as possible. Business continuity, of course. Yesterday we had an outage. That's not good for bringing companies to have stable, they want stable energy, they want cheap energy. They want both, of course. But stable energy is is more critical than the cost for most of the companies to look Puerto Rico and consider to establish their operations at Puerto Rico. Reduction of fossil fuel imports, of course, is essential for our economic growth. If the integration of renewable energy will not only goes on the direction of reducing costs, but avoiding the imports of any good is essential for the economic growth of any place. So, on my last slide regarding the challenge and what we need regarding critical infrastructure, equity, and resilience for Puerto Rico to achieve its clean energy and equity goals, a critical obstacle that must be collaboratively overcome are workforce constraints, bureaucracy, and entities coordination. Of course, HG asked me for bringing at least one obstacle. There are 3 obstacles that we need to focus at the same time. Workforce constraint, there is a lot for that. Bureaucracy, I am within the government, I have leverage for saying that. Entities coordination, of course, that's a must. Back 1 year ago, most of the agencies, we were like working separate. Nobody was like, and I have to be honest, with Luma now, we have a really good communication. We are sync. We are working together towards the same direction. I know that Luma is doing the same with the different agencies, and that's what we need to start doing and start focusing, but faster. It's the same. We need to work on a state plan for the EVs. Here is the Secretary of DTOP, and we need to work with that. Natural resources, it's a must that we work together. So workforce constraints, yes, we need to work. There are plenty of alternatives. There are plenty of funds that we at the Department of Economic Development can provide and facilitate. So we are open, of course, to work with everybody on this, as this is not only, yes, my focus is on energy, but again, our top priority is the economic development of Puerto Rico and the economic growth within the energy transformation that we all have. So, yeah.
Thanks so much, Francisco. All right, I want to get your reaction to that obstacle statement. We're going to get into this a little bit. So just keep one thing in mind, please. The reason I got into this was I took that time during leadership development work where what we did is we helped very high potential employees in very high margin companies, primarily pharma and companies like Diageo, who had, money was not the issue. It was extraordinary performance. And our role was to help them achieve breakthrough results that would catapult them into far greater margins. And everything this consulting firm focused on was how do you develop that leadership, those leadership competencies. So this one is key, is the articulation of an obstacle to enroll a critical group in helping you overcome it. So my question to the audience is, per this presentation, what obstacle will you walk away that you heard Francisco say today? Feel free to raise your hand. We'll have maybe Claudia, if I can help, if anybody wants to just answer that question. If you had to walk out right now, what would be the message you will remember from what Francisco just said to you as a leader? David? Please introduce yourself.
I'm going to get myself in trouble. I'm David Owens. I'm the Vice Chair of CREPA. And outstanding presentation. It's very seldom that I say I agree with much of what you said. So if I look at the critical areas here and the problem area, coming from the mainland, having worked in government, having been head of a trade association, all of that, the biggest one I see is bureaucracy. it's a real challenge here. You think you've got something done, and then somebody's looking over your shoulder and saying, no, you don't. So I think that is a huge challenge, and there's got to be a way to streamline bureaucracy.
Good afternoon. I'm Lisa Brown with Johnson Controls, and very proud to be sitting on the steering committee with Francisco. And I don't think we're going to fix bureaucracy in 12 months.
But at least one baby step within all the bureaucracy we need to focus on.
Right. You're already fixed, so we don't need to focus on you. Maybe when you're colleagues, right? You're awesome. I would think of workforce constraints. I would focus on that, and if I can do a dual, energy efficiency. We talk about renewables and we talk about grid modernization, but if we don't get our demand side in order and we don't look at energy efficiency, that's the fastest way to get on the path. So I think then looking at workforce constraints and how we help people get skilled up for those new roles. Thank you.
So the reason I'm asking you, I'm not going to let you off the hook with 3 Oscars. The capacity for leaders like you all to remember things when you have all the other things you're working on, you only get to put one thing in the slot, right? So we're going to help him get to that one. So I heard bureaucracy, I heard workforce constraints. Anybody else want to chime in here? All right. And a quick intro, please.
Hi, I'm Eduardo Padian. I'm VP of Operations for Scooping, the electric vehicles that you see outside. So as a business, right, I think one of them is entities coordination. And a lot of it has to do also with financials. And I think a question that I would like to go with this, in this summit as a whole, is the energy security that we have right now. So if you consider that business right now, if they want to take out a loan to go through all the process of renewable energies and go through everything that you just mentioned, right? That takes a lot into what's the current price of the fossil fuels that are right there. And considering what's been happening right now in Ukraine and in Russia, we have to consider how much does a small business, how much does Luma have overall in regards to how much of that operational cash flow gets eaten up by the fossil fuels that they can't then pay up for the loans needed to then be renewable, right? So there's a lot of the entity coordinations can happen, but if there's a big increase in fossil fuels, then the cash flow to then pay up those loans can be of difficulty.